Hello to all my newbies and my blossoming beauties. My name is Sandra. To those who are here for the first time, we are in a new setting. I am doing the car edition today. My son is in there playing the game with his cousins, and he gets very involved sometimes, and that's okay. So that's why I'm in the car today. But like I said, welcome. I hope you all are doing fine. Today we're going to be discussing grief part 3. For those who are here for the first time and you want to know how we got here, you can actually go to the first discussion about grief. This is part 3 of a series, so you can go to the first discussion about grief and it'll give you the story how we got here. To those who are just beginning your grief journey, I do encourage you to go to the first video, but don't feel rushed or obligated to start right away. Grief is a process and there are stages to this process. I do encourage you to have patience and not be hard on yourself, and just give yourself time, because I know especially at the beginning there's a lot of emotions and everything you have to unpack and sort through. So I do encourage you to go to this video. Do not watch this one, because I don't want you to feel any pressure that you have to do this right away. I don't want you to feel hopeless before you even start your process, okay? There's already much you have to deal with. So for those that have gotten their footing, that have their footing and are ready to move forward, then grab your beverage of choice. I am going to be drinking water, and let's hop into today's discussion. I am excited you decided to join me today. And like I said at the beginning of the introduction, to those who are just beginning their process, I do encourage you to go ahead on and watch the first one whenever you're ready, because there are practical steps there that can help you to begin your process. I don't want you, like I said, I don't want you to rush into it, because that may open doors to unrealistic expectations in this process, thinking that you can get over it quick, and when it doesn't happen that way, then it can really bring about disappointment. So like I said, don't rush it. I know at the beginning for me, I didn't even have the will to contend with anything. I didn't have the will to fight for anything, because everything is so raw and fresh. So like I said, there are stages in this process. So please take your time. Don't rush it. As you move along, you'll begin to feel when you need to take your next steps, but let that come naturally. Don't force it, okay? I call this the fight, because at the beginning of this process, in discussion 1, I did state that that there is a thin line between grieving and being overcome by grief, and that is the big fight. And there are little fights within this big fight that we have to make a daily conscious effort to overcome in order to win the big fight. So let's talk about the big fight. Like I said, it is the thin line between grieving and being overcome by grief. When I looked up the word overcome, it means to defeat or prevail over. So if you're looking at someone being defeated or prevailed over, what should be the response of the person that is being defeated and prevailed over? That person should fight, right? So if knowing what grieving is and being overcome with grief, you can give it the proper response. That's why I titled this The Fight. This is the long game. And it's easier said than done, but hence the name, The Fight. So it is very important for us to know what grieving is and what being overcome with grief is. So to grieve, you have good and bad days. You have hope. You move forward. To be overcome with grief, you have no good days, hopeless, dismal, no movement whatsoever. There's a cloud of despair over you as well, and maybe thoughts of suicide. And if you are suicidal, I really do encourage you to reach out to someone. You can actually access my first and second video. I really do talk about it in there. You're not alone. I'm telling you, you're not alone in that. And that is something that I also dealt with. So I don't want you to feel like it's an isolated situation, that you are alone in it. No way, you're not. And I'm not the only one. I also talk about this grief share program that I go to, and I'm not the only one that has thoughts of that. So it is something that needs to be addressed. Okay, it really needs to be addressed, because if you continue to stay isolated, it can push you to actually follow through. So, and we don't want that. We really don't want that. I always say, I've been stressing how much each of us have purpose. We still have a next chapter in our lives. So I really do encourage you to reach out to someone, okay? But knowing the difference between the two, you can take temperature checks. And that is very essential in this process. You take your temperature checks to see, for example, if I am having good and bad days, more good days than bad, I'll probably have like 3 good days and I'll have a bad day, then I believe that's on the healthy side of grieving. But if I am having a whole week of being dismal and in despair, then I'm going into the second week, and then I'm going into the third week. I would say the first week you might be like, okay, maybe I need to monitor this. Then you're going into your second week and your third week, no good days, then you may have to take your temperature check. And I'm going to talk about some of the things we need to monitor in this process. I am really stressing that this is not for those who are at the beginning of their process. Like I said, there are other things that you need to do. The temperature checks are very important in this process, because this is the long game right here. Once you are able to kind of maintain yourself, get to the point where you're having a healthy grieving process, then the maintenance to maintain that is the long game, the long fight, okay? Like I said in the beginning, in this big fight, there are small fights that we have to fight in order to win the big fight. One of them is the mind. And what are we thinking, right? Is it constantly negative or positive? We want to shift our negative thoughts into the positive side. I'm going to give you an example. So I would always think about my future and what I lost when I lost my husband. I always used to think about how hopeless the future looks to me. I didn't have any expectations for the future. I just was like, my husband is gone. I just don't see my future without him. So that didn't leave me in a position to even begin to try and embrace the next chapter of my life, because I closed it off with this negative thinking. So recently, I've been thinking about the time that I had with him and how much of a blessing it was for me to even just have that time with him. It doesn't take away from how much I miss him and how much I do desire for him to be with me now, but it's more on a healthy side of grief. So that is the temperature check on that, to make sure that your negative thoughts don't consistently, daily, every day, all day roll in your mind and cause you to begin to go further down in despair. Then it really calls for some action. Okay, that means grief is trying to overtake you, because you won't see any movement in that. You won't see any good days in that type of thinking as well. So daily, getting up, being intentional about thinking about the positive things, because it's already a hurtful situation, right? We don't want to compile any extra pain on top of a already painful process. So being intentional about what you're thinking, making sure that it's positive. And I don't want to talk like this is going to be easy. Like I said, it is a fight. I don't want to talk like you're not going to have some times where you may find yourself in that negative process of thinking again. It's just all a part of the process. And like I said, I don't want anybody to be hard on themselves, but I believe eventually, even with me, if I'm seeing myself 3-4 days, and sometimes I might not even realize it, but before you know it, when you start feeling that horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach again, and the clouds of despair coming back over you, then I believe it'll begin to say, hey, look, something's not clicking here, something's not right. And then you can evaluate what's been going on those days to get you back in the healthy side of grieving, okay? Another small fight that we have to deal with in this process is our emotions, our feelings. Not allowing them to lie to us, okay? Because they do. Feelings, emotions, they do lie to us. There's a lot of emotions and feelings involved in grieving, and I wish it didn't have to be like this, but it is. And because it is the reality of the grieving process, we need to be realistic about it. You deal with so many emotions, so many feelings, especially at the beginning. That's why I say there's no sense in even trying to skip over some of the things that you need to do to rush the process. It just will not help at all. Take it from someone who's tried to rush. Take it from someone who's been busy to avoid the pain of it all. Always leaving the house and getting involved in something, especially at the beginning. But you can't be busy for the rest of your life. It'll hit you like a ton of bricks. So take it from someone who has been there, done that, and really advise you not to do that. Okay? Don't avoid it. Sit in the grief. It's very hard. It's very, very hard to do so, but it's essential to your healing process. But there are a number of emotions that we go through. And Some of them are, some of the emotions are anxiety, fear, anxiety, heightened levels of stress. I know fear for me brought on a lot of anxiety for me, anger, disappointment, depression, guilt, and the list goes on and on. But I'm going to talk about maybe two specifically that I felt was very prevalent in my process. And it is the overwhelming, debilitating, isolating feeling of loneliness. That alone is something to contend with. Once I found out about this grief share program, there was this meeting that they had the week before. It said it was titled "The Loss of a Spouse." I went to that, and when I walked in, I was already anxious and stressed about it and scared to go. But I went in there, and it was a handful of us, but I was the youngest, and everybody else was so wise. They have a lot of wisdom under their belt, and they lost their spouse at a beautiful age. They had a long time with their spouse. And that was something I desired so much for me and my husband. And to see that they had that and I didn't, I was so jealous. I went in there one way and left upset. I left so feeling like my heart was underneath my feet. But as I continued throughout the week, because it was actually the grief share program was going to start that next Tuesday, and the lady there was saying, "Are you going to come back? I hope you come back." And I'm saying in my head, hell no, I'm not coming back, to put it lightly. But throughout that week, I kept giving it some thought. And to tell you the truth, isolation is a choice. Okay? Isolation is a choice. Your feelings could really make you feel that you're so alone in this process, which I understand because I have people around me, my family around me, but I still feel alone in this. And I'm feeling that feeling of loneliness comes from not being able to relate to someone in this time. Just to bring some clarity to what I am saying here, I feel there is a loneliness associated with not having your loved one physically there and the loneliness of feeling alone in this process. The feeling of being alone in this process was the isolating loneliness I am focusing on in this discussion. The loneliness associated with not having your loved one physically there is part of grieving. But what I have come to learn in my process that maybe others can relate to as well is that the loneliness of being on this grief journey while learning how to cope with this strange and traumatic change in your life can be very overwhelming. Having community can help ease this form of loneliness. Getting involved in some type of community that has like situation. And when you're able to meet with them or talk with that person, he or she, and be vulnerable and not feel like you're so alone, isolated, that you're crazy because you're thinking certain things, because you're feeling certain things, because these people are actually in the same situation as you. They're feeling the same thing, they thinking the same thing, and they can relate to you. That feeling of loneliness really starts to subside. And that has been my case. Your feelings will say you're alone in this. Nobody cares what you're going through. Everybody moving on with their lives, and you are stuck in this by yourself. But there are other people who have lost loved ones who are feeling stuck as well and are trying to figure out the next portion of their lives. And it's for us to choose to reach out to community and get involved, so that feeling of isolation, that lie that you're alone, will not be the thing that you have to contend with every day. And it is so important to grab a hold to community so you won't get beat down by your feelings. You won't get beat down by negative thinking. You won't get beat down by your emotions. You'll have people to encourage you. And when you feel like you have people backing you, it'll motivate you to continue to move forward, okay? So please, I am absolutely begging you to reach out to community. Another thing I dealt with was fear. My husband, me and him, he tagged along with me pretty much everywhere I went. And vice versa. I tagged along with him wherever he went. We're very family oriented, and we hung out with each other all the time. And so once I lost him, I came out here, and it was hard for me to even go out by myself. I felt like I was exposed and naked because I didn't have him with me. And it was hard for me to look people in the eyes or look at people sometimes. I just felt like they just saw straight through me. And that fear just brought about anxiety. Not only that, but fear of being a single parent. Fear of not being able to succeed in my future. Just fear all around. And like the same with loneliness, it's still something I contend with today. But what I do to help with this is, there are a lot of single women out here raising their children and getting the job done perfectly. So that doesn't exempt me. It doesn't exempt me. So to help me with this, I expose myself more to single mothers, single parents who are getting a job done, to encourage me. I'm perfectly capable of raising these 3 beautiful kids. And another thing I do is the goals that me and my husband set for my children, and not only my children, but our lives, I'm going after those goals. And I feel that's something to honor him even further. And not only does it do that for me, but it also makes me feel like he's right here with me. Because I'm moving on with the next chapter, but I'm taking those things that we said we wanted to do, and I'm following through with that. So his legacy can continue to live on in this family. Okay? Another one I want to address is the feeling of guilt. The feeling of guilt. And the feeling of guilt, I didn't have the feeling of guilt for my husband, but I had the feeling of guilt for my dad. My dad passed away when I was 26 years old, and he came to my house and was saying how sick he felt. I brought him to the hospital, but I did not know that he was not coming out. And I felt so guilty with him because I knew that there was more that I could have done for him while he was living. And I felt so guilty about it. And it was hard for me to forgive myself. But understanding that we are humans and we make mistakes. I know that can be considered a cop out or an excuse, but it's the truth. We make mistakes. We never look at our loved ones and say, oh, they're going to be gone in the next few days, so let me try and make up for the things that I didn't do, or apologize for some of the things that I said. It doesn't happen that way. But we make mistakes. I know for me, I can encourage somebody and say, you love them to death. There was no, just because you didn't do that didn't take away from how much you love that person, right? So, but when it came down to me, I didn't give myself any grace. I didn't give myself any mercy on it. So, am I higher than a human now? Because I can't show the same grace for myself? Look at it as a mistake, something you can learn from. And I was granted that opportunity with my grandmother. My father passed. I wasn't there for him like I wanted to. I knew I could have been. But I said, if I have the opportunity again, I will make sure I give my all and do everything that I can for that person. With everything in my capacity to do, I'm going to do it. And I was able to do it for my grandmother because I learned from my mistake with my father. And that's just being human. That's just life. We make mistakes, and I pray we learn from them. We do better, right? And that's why I didn't feel the guilt for my husband, because in my relationship with him, I poured myself out in my marriage as a wife, as a mother, to my husband, to my children. And he poured himself out to me and our children. And there was no regrets. Like I said, don't be hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. If you allow that guilt to consume you, that feeling of guilt to consume you, you will not move forward. But not only that, those feelings can cause you to be unhealthy physically as well. I think I said it in the second discussion that there are people who have become ill because of this. And it's very important that we take care of ourselves. So do what you can, do what you have to continue to move forward. I'm sorry that it won't be easy. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not going to be easy. But it is doable. You can do this. We can do this. We have the next chapter of our lives to embrace. Not saying that our loved ones will be forgotten in that next chapter. We're going to take their memory, them right along with us. And that's exactly what they want. They want us to move forward. They are rooting for us to move forward. Okay? They are wishing and hoping the best for us. That alone should give you some motivation. Doing it in honor of them. But I'm going to link at the bottom in the description box, the Grief Share program. It's not just in this state that I'm in, but you can look it up online and you can see where it's being hosted in your area, and when registration begins again. It is $20, and I think the $20 is just for the book. It's 2 hours, you meet one day per week. And I think they also offer the Zoom option for those that are not ready to be around people yet. But like I say, all this stuff is in your timing, whenever you are ready. Because, and even this I felt was good, was if you feel that you need to go through the Grief Share program again, you can. You can do it as many times as you want to. I know this one is probably a lengthy video. I'm thinking I said all that I needed to say. And I believe this is the last one of the grief series, because this is the long game. The long game. I want to leave you with some encouragement. You can do this. You can do this. You can overcome anything if you put the proper fight behind it. Okay? So I'm hopeful for you, and I'm happy for the next chapter in your life. I know you all don't know me personally, but I do care for you all. I love you, and I hope the best for you in this time, okay? So until next discussion, you all have a great one.